everybody. Again, I'm Carrie Rice, and welcome. I have a special guest today. This is Margo Harris, and she is here to chat with us a little bit. Margo is a yoga and mindfulness teacher for kids as young as 6 weeks all the way up to 18 years in a variety of different settings. She hosts workshops, teaches in-person and virtual classes, and does different visits within the community and schools in her area. Margo, you're based out of New York, is that correct?
Yes, I'm from Long Island, New York, way downstate.
Awesome.
Beach girl through and through.
Nice, I love it. Well, let's just kind of jump in. What got you started in either your yoga journey or kids yoga journey? What kind of brought you onto the mat?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Carrie, so much for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this this chat, and for all of your future trainees that are going to see this, hello, and I'm so glad to see you or see you. Okay, so I got started in yoga. I was a really, really anxious child. And it was, and I'm now a very, very anxious adult. And I like to remind people
Yes.
of that. It's like,
Yes.
that kind of thing doesn't necessarily go away for everybody, if at all. So I was a very anxious kid, but I didn't really have my anxiety labeled by anybody. It was just, oh, Margo's worried. Margo worries a lot. And it was never like, hey, Margo's worries are pretty big sometimes, and maybe we should look into them. There was a few times where I was like, all right, maybe we'll take her to a quick little therapy sesh here. And, actually, even when I was really little, my mom would talk to me about breathing, and she was not a yogi. She had no idea anything about how or why. She just knew that breathing was powerful, and she would recommend it for me. And so it did help, but it was coming few and far between. It wasn't anything consistent, nothing that I was practicing on the regular. And then as I grew, obviously life gets more and more stressful. The older you get, the more responsibilities, expectations, and demands. And the same is true for kids and teens now. Of course, maybe even way more so. And so when I got to college, it was my freshman year, and I had my first full-blown anxiety attack in the middle of my final exam it was a history exam. And I had never experienced this level of heightened overstimulation in my body to the point where I was frozen. It was a physical experience that was unfamiliar, because even though I had lots of anxiety growing up, I had never experienced like a true fight, flight, or freeze moment, or at least not to my memory. Okay. And so I had this freak out in the middle of my final exam, and it felt like it was an hour long, but maybe only a minute or two went by. And the kid next to me, or the guy next to me, was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, I couldn't even respond. I couldn't respond to him. And he said, okay, I think you're maybe having a little bit of a panic attack. And again, this was like a phrase I was like, huh, a what?
Yeah.
And so he encouraged me to like put down my pencil and, try to feel my feet on the ground and put my hand to my heart to notice my breathing. And I kind of felt like normally I would never engage with a total stranger. And this was a large like hall of people taking this test. But I also felt paralyzed to a certain extent. And I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and allow myself to keep feeling like this? Or am I going to take this total stranger's advice and hope for the best? And so I did. I listened. I put my hand to my heart. Okay. I started breathing, and I noticed the tension start to release. And I started, so again, all story told, it was maybe 3-4 minutes tops, the whole thing from start to finish. So I get through the rest of my tasks, and I asked him, I said, afterwards, I was so embarrassed. I was like, I am so sorry. I don't even know what happened to me back there. Thank you so much for stopping what you were doing and noticing me and helping. And maybe you took the risk of getting yourself in trouble for talking to me during the final exam. And he was just like, oh, no worry. I used to have them all the time. I was like, okay, how did you learn all that stuff? He's like, oh, I do yoga. You can do yoga here at college. I was like, oh, okay. Like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I had a dance background. I was like, sure. So I looked up yoga, and it was like all these pretty poses and stretching and breathing. And I was like, oh, great. That should be, easy peasy. And so I signed up for yoga the next semester, and it was not easy peasy. It was not a breeze. It was nothing like my dance. I mean, absolutely nothing. Dance is all outward expression and beauty, and yoga is all inner work. It's very sort of deep and dark and muddy in like the good way. But I loved it. It was like, I think for so many of us that are brought to this work, it was life altering and changing. And it made me really excited about the things I was going to be able to accomplish with my body. I didn't need any other tools besides my body to feel better and to cope with my big worry and my big fear. So that's how I came to yoga. And then my practice ebbed and flowed for years. And then and when I became an early childhood teacher, I started to teach the students yoga because I loved it. And it was such a big part of my, practice in terms of like, I wasn't getting out on my mat every day at the time. This again, in my, mid 20s. But I was doing it often enough that I thought, hey, my kids could really benefit from this. And even as young as, 3 to 5 years old, they're having worries and panic and anxiety and separation issues and all of that. So I started bringing it in like once a year. We would do a whole little, like during Heart Health Month, February or March, Nutrition Month, I was able to work in with like the umbrella of wellness, doing yoga with the kids. And then it sort of blossomed from there. So then it became, the kids loved it so much, the parents, the other teachers thought it was such a great thing. And so I started doing it weekly. And then it became daily. And then it became all like different parts of the day. And so for years, it was just kind of like a part of the school day for me and my students. And then in 2015, I decided I was going to leave the classroom full time. And once I went to my first weekend of training, I was like, I have to do this. I want this to be my career. This is my favorite part of teaching, is social emotional learning and teaching body autonomy and awareness and regulation. And so why not do only that? And so when I found out there were ways for teachers or for people to bring this work to kids exclusively via kids yoga companies, or you can go out and do it on your own. And so I was like, all right, I think I'm going to take the risk and leave my job and see what happens with it. And so it's been 6 years and
6 years later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what ages do you currently work with?
So I teach everything. Right now, I'm teaching mostly babies through elementary school age. Okay. But before the pandemic, it was babies through middle school. I didn't have any high schoolers in the last couple of years, but my first couple of years I taught at a couple of different high school settings also, but mostly it's early childhood, which is where my educational background is in as well. So like babies through age, like third grade, that's like my niche age group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say babies, are these like parent and child classes, like a mom and me or a whatever you title it? Okay.
Yeah, it's baby and grown-up yoga, toddler and me yoga, preschool yoga, which is mostly it's not just preschool, it's like 3 to 6. You can kind of, I usually call it preschool yoga, but it's like early year yoga and then elementary yogas for like, I'd say second grade through 5th.
That's awesome. I love that you have the early childhood like toolkit to pull from. So I'm sure that you incorporate like literacy and counting and, all the fun elements of preschool right into a yoga class. So it's kind of like hidden learning gems for you.
Yes.
Do you have any props that are like your go-tos when you're working with that early childhood age?
So it really depends on the energy of the group. I feel like I need to have, you always want to have the bag of go-to tools and toys.
Yeah.
Especially with that age, because you really never know with all kids really, with any age, but especially with the little ones whose attention spans are even shorter half the time, most of the time. It's good to just have stuff there and then you can pull it or not.
Right.
Sometimes less is more. And so really just using, my words, my voice, their imaginations is sometimes really great and enough. And other times it's like, all right, things are getting off the rails. Time to pull out some egg shakers. That's a really, really fun one.
Yes.
Egg shakers. I have a couple I was teaching earlier today. So as my setup is still behind me, I have Medi Teddy. I always bring lots of stuffed animals. that's really great too, because sometimes the little ones, they freak out a little bit, or they're not sure, especially if they're being left with you and not, and mom or dad or grown-ups aren't staying. Having something that they can snuggle or cuddle is helpful. Yeah. And it's just a good visual tool. And there's Snuffle Bunny. He's actually a book character. So lots and lots of books. My closet over there is a mess. I'm not going to open it, but I have over 170 children's books from my years teaching preschool, and then now as a kids yoga teacher. Scarves, the breathing ball, right? The Obermann sphere. Yeah, those are staples. I always have my singing bowl. And then I have smaller one. Oh no, it's over there. I have smaller ones too that the kids can ring. So bells and chimes are actually really, really great equalizers in the class too. It's funny because whenever I'm teaching toddler classes, a lot of times, parents aren't expecting their kids at 2 years old to be able to they're not sitting still and owning necessarily, right? But they are always genuinely thrilled and excited and surprised when I can ring a singing bowl and all the toddlers are right. Everyone's, what is that? And so and I usually whisper right after, okay, that was the only quiet moment we're gonna have. And sometimes, you will have other quiet moments too, but that usually gets a nice chuckle. So I guess my favorite pops are books, stuffed animals, egg shakers, scarves, anything colorful. Bean bags are really, really fun. And the breathing ball, and maybe some bells and chimes. Little instruments can be really fun. But every teacher has to come to their group of kids, their age group, their practice with stuff that speaks to their heart as an authentic teacher. Right. And so some of these things I'm saying, you might be like, oh my gosh, that sounds so fun and great. And then maybe you try to use some of this stuff. It doesn't feel natural to you. It's like, don't try it.
I don't know what to do with this. Yeah.
Right. And if you do some, you look up some great songs to go with the scarves maybe, and you try it out, it doesn't feel good in your body. Okay. You tried it out. Maybe you try it again another day. Maybe you just say, hey, that's not for me, and keep messing around with it and find the tools that feel good.
Well, and something that I've noticed in my teaching experience when I involve props is sometimes I watch them. I learn from them and how they naturally start to use the prop, and then maybe we all start doing that. So maybe we're all, cleaning a window with the scarf, or we're mopping the floor, or maybe we use the bean bags to balance, and somebody starts doing something really unique with it, and so then we all try it their way. And I just feel like kids in that early elementary preschool age are just such great teachers if we give them time to teach us too as we move through.
They're so highly creative and intuitive.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned books. I know that books are an important part of kids yoga, especially younger ones. And there's some really great books out there that I kind of go to as, they're not even yoga books, like just grabbing books off the shelf at the local library that now that I've had experience as a yoga teacher, that comes easy to me. But when I first started out, I definitely reached for things that already kind of had the yoga in them. And you have brought us one of those. You have a book that has recently been published, Cookie Yoga. And this book, I have to admit, is so fun. There's a lot of books out there that when you read through them, the cadence is off. Like you feel like you have to put too much effort into it to let it tell the story. And this one does it on its own. It's got a cute rhyming scheme to it. The illustrations are beautiful. Thank you. And my children are 9, 9, and 12, and my 9-year-olds even have asked to read this a couple times. So it's definitely not geared towards little bitties. We're big bakers in our house, so I love the fact that she's baking. So tell us about this book. Tell us how this idea came about and how you got all the way to the finish line. This is amazing.
Well, first of all, I so appreciate hearing from anybody who enjoys the book, but most especially from fellow kids yoga colleagues, because truthfully, I've always, so when I was teaching preschool, I would constantly come up with songs and rhymes and chants for my students.
Yeah.
And every week I had this big chart next to where I sat at circle time, and it had the song of the week in it. And it was something I wrote every single week, 9 times out of 10. I mean, so if we had all the weeks of school, maybe there'd be 1 or 2 themes where where I struggled to write a little something for that theme. And so I would look something up and I'd be able to find something to put in there, but almost all of them were written by me. And then I had this big shared reading binder in my library section of my classroom, and all the kids that were in pre-reading stage, because they're, between 3 and 5 years old, they couldn't necessarily read all the books I had in the library. Of course, they're using their pre-reading skills, right, that I was teaching them throughout the year, but they knew those shared reading songs. They were reading those, even if they didn't know every single letter, and they knew those. And I always felt like rhyming and also being able to rhyme to deliver and help kids retain information, I felt like that was a gift of mine. And so I
would agree. I would definitely agree, because I mean, not everybody can rhyme without it sounding like a jumble of words in your mouth. And this one has a really nice flow to the rhyme, for sure.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, I've heard it from a few different yoga teachers too. And that was one of my thoughts, was like, when I first started teaching, even though I had my practice and I felt like I can do this, right? It's like you get there in front of the group of kids and you're like, okay, this is my full-time job now. I need to make this work. I want to make this work. And so it is easier to pull those yoga books that aren't necessarily just because, like you, I could just pull any book out and make it have to do with regulation or body awareness or nature and yoga, all the things, right? But when the book has the word yoga on it, it made me feel safer when I first started teaching. And so with that in mind, I thought, well, who's going to be buying this book? Regular school teachers that maybe have no background or experience with yoga, but might understand or start to understand that there's a real benefit for that for their students. Parents who are also noticing the same thing, but maybe they don't have any idea how to approach this with their child in a fun, tangible way. And new kids yoga teachers, any kids yoga teacher, but new ones especially. I really wanted my story to be able to be easy to grab and read, no matter what stage you are on your yoga journey, even if you're not on a yoga journey. So the idea for the book, first of all, this is my company logo. Cookie.
I was going to ask what came first, like really? Okay.
Cookie was my childhood nickname. I was my mom, who is the mama in the book is based on my mom.
Okay.
Maria, the main character in the book, is based on a 6-year-old me.
I love it.
So, my mom, she works with the elderly, or she did, but she also bakes constantly. If she's a big cake baker, especially. And so she was so excited to bake me a cake on my first birthday, and I hated it. I thought it was disgusting. I was spit it out and I was making a mess. And I'm the only person in my whole family that hates cake. And my mom made me cookies, and I loved cookies to the point where it's a little bit of a problem. And I've said before, I still have some, sharing issues. I don't love to share my food. I don't love to share my cookies, even with my husband, who have been together with for 21 years almost. And he knows. But so Cookie was always my nickname through my childhood. Even my friends in high school and college all called me Cookie. And so when I thought about what would be in my story, I thought about what are my favorite things in the world.
There you go.
Mindfulness and cookies. And so everything kind of slowly unfolded from there. I thought about my anxiety as a kid, but I still had lots of energy and love. And I still really wanted to learn to trust myself, but I struggled with that. And so these were all the things, the issues that I coped with growing up, and that I still do, that I wanted to be a part of the story.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many underlying themes beyond just yoga in this book. She's one of the things that I grabbed right away was just the patience that's involved with the process of taking, dough and crafting it, shaping it, creating she made yoga shaped cookies, and then they have to put them in the oven, and then they have to be patient and wait for them to come out. And then kids, again, have to be patient for them to cool and before they can eat them. And that like underlying process is such an easy thing as a parent to be like, well, it's just like in a cookie dough story. We got to cook the cookies, but then they have to, we have to wait. This is just like that. We have to wait our turn in line. We have to wait our turn. It was just such an easy way to talk about patience for sure. And just, I love that she just kind of like skips over to the family room with her mom or the living room to do some yoga while they wait for their cookies. So it's like shows parents too, that, we don't have to have these like picture perfect settings in order to do some yoga with our kids. We can just take 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. So as a parent, that to me was really special and showed, not only are they doing yoga poses together, but in the illustrations, she's traveling, she's in different places in each pose. So you can kind of see that they're using their imagination and talking through the setting. So just bravo. It's such a cute, fun book.
Thank you.
Cute, fun book.
Hearing that. Thank you so much.
So where can we get this if we want to own Cookie Doga?
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon right now. The book is $12.99. It's also available. I self-published through a company called Book Baby. And so I have a shop, everyone that publishes with them, you set up your own little shop on bookbaby.com. And that's linked in my Instagram bio. So Amazon and my Book Baby site. And then I have a large inventory here at my house that I've been selling books to at a couple of local retailers here on Long Island.
Fantastic.
And also a couple of the virtual visits that I've done, if sometimes the teachers or the parents have heard about it, or their kid comes home and they're like, oh, I had that book, and Margo doesn't live far. And so I've been able to sort of like package up a whole bunch of books and sign them and deliver them to local schools and stuff.
Yeah. So tell me about these virtual book visits. What does that look like for a school or a daycare or someone that might want to participate in that program?
Yeah. So, I literally just started doing them about less than a month ago. Okay. And I've already done a handful of them. Actually just did one just before this chat. And it went really well. It's been really fun. I do it right through this platform over Zoom, and I just send out the information. And then most of the schools and even in the daycare centers, I'm going to be doing one this spring for a daycare center. We'll see how it goes, but they all have smart boards, or they're using, each classroom has an iPad, right? Yeah. And so sometimes, the teacher will have it up on their phone so I can see the kids doing their thing. But then they have me up on the smart board, so I'm kind of getting a side view. And so because of all the advancements in technology, it's been super easy so far, knock wood, that, you would just simply reach out to me and we would set up a day and time and, work out invoicing and all that good stuff.
Well, and that was going to kind of move me into my next topic anyway, is just marketing. So those who are watching this as maybe a brand new kids yoga teacher or a kind of a side gig, maybe they've been an adult teacher or they have a day job and they're just kind of doing kids workshops here and there. What would be your best advice about how to market yourself, how to get going? You obviously are evidence of that, left your full-time teaching job and decided to do this full-time. So what kind of actions do you think are necessary to jump in?
So, it seems like such, it's a loaded question in many ways. Yeah. Because I feel like there are a lot of different avenues you can pursue in terms of marketing. My preferred method has been to use Instagram. I had attempted a Facebook page as well before I left Facebook altogether a year and a half ago, and I didn't like it. I really couldn't stand the platform. It didn't work for me for multiple reasons, and I committed. Then I was like, all right, I'm really enjoying Instagram. I'm going to commit to Instagram. And so I did all the reading that I could about how to best engage on Instagram. And there's a lot of courses you can take. You can look up there's so many people out there putting up, I'm sure people could find YouTube videos on best ways to engage. So like, if you really want to pick a lane that speaks to you, and feels like a space where you're going to be able to show up every day and be authentic and show yourself. Because, and I'll be honest and say, when I first left my job and started doing this, I didn't use any social media for work. I was doing cold calling and emailing, right? And that was really hard. And I was able to, and then I was also independent contractor for other kids yoga companies. And I'm still doing that for some of them that I've chosen just to continue to work with. And so the good thing about that is that they're the ones in charge of finding the work, and then you just go and teach, you do your thing, and then you leave and you get paid, and that's great. But if you're trying to do things and find things on your own, find the avenue that works best for you. The good thing about social media is that it's free. And so I'm able to use Instagram, show up for it every day, be my very most authentic self. And that's my number one piece of advice is don't try to be like any other kids yoga teachers that you follow them all, follow me, follow you, right? Get inspired, see how we're doing this thing called social media, and then find, your own path and way through it. And I found that in this past year, when I fully committed to it since the pandemic started, and since I knew I was going to be coming out with this book, for the years prior, I didn't have to work that hard to find work because I had the one school and that led into another school, and there's word of mouth too, right? And so you get lucky, you find someone that's willing to give you the time of day. You get in there and you do the best job you can do, and they love it. The kids are happy and excited, and then more people find out about it, and the snowball gets bigger.
Right.
But then when the pandemic happened, everybody was in the same sinking ship, and so I had to change up what I was going to do. And that was a big part of the reason why I had the time and energy and renewed focus to sit down and make this book happen. Because I'd always wanted to do it anyway, but I let my anxieties and again, it's like going back to the
voices
thing.
Talk.
Like we were saying before we started recording, right? Like you have these grand ideas and you're like, but I can't do that. I'm busy doing all these other things. And you find the time anyway, so I found the time. And I said, how am I going to get the word out there about all the other things I'm trying to do now? Not just the book, but now I'm forced to teach virtually. Now I have to adapt. Now, not all my schools can have me back this year because of funding.
Or you can't even get in. Like in our area, there's just no outside anyone in our schools. So not, we can't even get into the schools, even if we had kind of a partnership built with that. So like what I'm hearing you say mostly about marketing is, you need to know your goals. You need to know like what you're shooting for. If you are trying to build this wide audience that expands beyond your small town or your area where you're trying to teach, that's going to be one different avenue of marketing strategy. If you're trying to target just like schools in your area, that might be that grassroots, writing letters, making flyers, showing up at the school corporation building to introduce yourself, and researching even like grants that are offered in your area and make sure your schools know about those opportunities, because sometimes they don't know that stuff exists and they could pay you. They just didn't know they could pay you. So I and the authentic, like being authentic, I think that is the best takeaway I think anybody could take from this chat, is that you are obviously very authentic, just sitting down, having a casual conversation with us, and that comes across so easily. And that's what it takes to survive in this business. I feel like is you have to lay it out. You have to be who you are. You can't put on your face when you're in front of little kids and then take it off in public, especially if you live in a small town. You have to, you have to be who you are.
And people want you, right? That you wind up selling you. Yes, you're hopefully going to be giving their kids incredible, lifelong, valuable skills. But at the end of the day, if there's nothing about you that draws them in, then why should they trust you with their kids, right? Or even if you're a really, really great yogi practitioner and you have all, you can fly into crow pose, like you ask any kid, no one cares about your practice, right? They care about if you're showing up and you're excited to be with them, you're showing them love and curiosity. And that was one of my biggest problems when I first started teaching, and maybe you can attest to the same thing. I had all these mentors and people you watch when you're training, and it's like, oh my gosh, I want to sound just like that. I'm gonna use that exact cue. I was like writing down quotes that people were saying. I'm like, okay, this is exactly how I'm going to say this. And then I attempted to do it, and I lost everything that I feel in my gut now more than ever that like makes me a special teacher, which is my own voice is awesome and important and valuable. And my presence is enough. And what I say, while maybe not as perfect as the way I heard so-and-so say it a couple of years ago, it's me saying it. And I can find my own way of getting the kids into that mindset or that pose, or, getting them ready for the next activity or a breathing spot or whatever we're going to work on. Finding the beauty is of this niche, because kids yoga is growing, but it's still a little bit of a niche, is that there are no hard and fast rules about how you can approach it. There's so much room for autonomy and individuality. And like you said so beautifully before about watching the kids and allowing them to explore the materials. I mean, the same would be true for upper elementary and middle school kids.
Right.
And you also mentioned, I know you have a little bit of a project going that we were talking about before you were recording. And it's like, when the kids get older, sometimes the resources become slimmer, or they become very, very adults. Like they shoot right from being babyish to really, really adult. And so having something for kids transitioning, upper elementary, tween years, is really, really important. But at the same time, it's like kids are at that age are still kids, and they're still looking for ways to play and be silly. And if you're showing up with that energy and it's who you are, you're also giving them permission to be kids.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I mean, there's so many of those same principles that even though when you go through kids yoga training, you're taught this is going to be completely different than an adult class. You're going to leave this with a different energy. You're going to teach from a different place. You're kind of told that a lot, kind of prepped in your head that this is going to be so different. This is going to be so different. But then at the end of the day, there's so much that's really not different. There's still, kids are showing up to the mat, for a lot of the same reasons that adults keep coming back. They like the feelings that you give them. They like the warmth. They like the invitation to rest. They like the invitation to be inside their own bodies and become more aware of what's happening. And adults are there too. There's just so much of that if you have a solid practice of your own, you can pull into the classroom with kids, without, you just package it differently. It's just wrapped in a different wrapping paper, but it's still the heart of the gift is still the same, whether you put, all the extra, scarves and shaky things and crazy music and, all of these things going in the background, the heart of it is still the same. So this has been so wonderful to chat with you and kind of talk through your full journey of, finding yoga really in a time of a little bit of stress and chaos in your own mind and body, and then transforming that gift into the classroom and then beyond the classroom. And now you're, all over, so it's a pretty amazing journey that I hope that you have had enough time in 2020, 2021 to really be grateful for, because you've really accomplished some amazing things.
Thank you so much. Of all the things that sometimes through this pandemic have been hard to remember to practice, is not my gratitude practice. Thankfully, that one remains steady.
Right.
Once in a while through this pandemic, we all have to practice a little harder these days, I think sometimes. And that's okay for anyone watching. Like, don't beat yourself up. Lots and lots of grace. Even us yogis that preach this stuff left and right need the practice and need to say out loud, I'm struggling with my own practice right now. And I had plenty of moments of that, but I'm beyond grateful for every opportunity and privilege I've been given this past year, everything from top to bottom through this pandemic. And I'm beyond excited for all the hands and of little children and big children and grownups everywhere that have had the chance to get my book and share it with loved ones or students. It just means it's surreal and wild and means everything. So it feels good. Thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled to have had this opportunity to chat with you. I'm so glad we got to meet. I found you through Instagram, so it's working. Yay! So, just fantastic. It was so wonderful to have this time together. And I know that everyone listening will be able to pull some sort of tidbit of information to apply into their kids yoga journey. So thank you again. That was wonderful.
It's been my pleasure, Carrie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.